We're going to look first at the basic interests. The basic interests are the foundation of the report, or what I like to refer to as the building blocks of the results. In other words, you can take all of these different scores on all of these different areas and combine them in different ways to yield different results on the assessment. So it is these scores that provide the foundation for all of the other scores on the report. It's the most direct source of information or data for the student. It is directly based on their responses to the assessment. So what you're going to want to do on this page is look at the high and the low scores. And you may recognize these. These are the same basic interests that were on the detailed scoring information page that we already talked about. But you don't see the male and female percentiles in the raw scores. You only see the combined percentile. And the same applies, that you can click on the scale names and learn about the basic interests. You're going to want to look at the highs and the lows for your student. So I want to point out in my report how much similarity there are in really the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 maybe. For me, I might recommend that you look at my top 7 basic interests. They are all very close. They're all in the 90s or even 100 percentile. So it's really hard to distinguish or discriminate between these. I have almost an equal interest in all of these different areas. For each student, it might be a little bit different, but what you can do is look at the bars which indicate their scores and see where they start to really drop off. And it's at that point that you might want to cut off your discussions, or you might want to center your discussions around those at the top before the drop-off. You'll also want to look at the low scores. These red scores here, so these are areas that your student might want to not focus on when they're developing their career plan. And it's good for them to know the areas that they want to steer clear of, because they may not find very much satisfaction in careers that emphasize these types of things. You will also want to look for patterns when you're interpreting this page, to the extent that it's possible. For example, for me, the social science and social service, so both highlighting the word social, are pretty high scores for me. So that sort of element of helping people is something that's coming up fairly strong for me, as well as writing. Technical writing and author journalism are both related and fairly high scores for me. Again, we see an element of leadership, supervising others, authoritarian leadership. So it'll take you some time to get comfortable with the different types of patterns that will emerge, and you'll have to have a good understanding of the basic interests. But as you interpret more and more of these reports, you'll start to see these patterns emerging. You will also see on this page that the basic interests are separated into work roles and work styles. So work roles describe preferences for activities associated with certain occupations, and work styles describe preferences for different types of work environments. We've talked about my basic interests and discovered, I have some interests in helping and in law, mediation, so there are some areas that we probably want to focus on for a career. But we haven't focused much on the work styles, which are also important as supplementary pieces of information. So you can see that I'm high here on academic achievement. So that might suggest that when looking at the areas of interest up here, the work roles, that I might be well suited to college-based educational program that emphasizes academic achievement and things like scholarly activities, like studying, reading, and researching, for example. Again, with the work styles, you can look at where scores start to really drop off, and you look at high and low, and there's so few that it's interesting to touch on each of them and find out whether results resonate with the student and what they think about their scores on these areas. And again, a point that I want to emphasize on the basic interest page is that all of these areas can be fulfilled outside of your work life. So even something like mediation and persuasion, you may have to employ those skills just in everyday life when you're dealing with friends and family. And so that's just one example of how you can get a handle on your interests and what you like doing in your life.